Is everyday life so exciting? Are schools and offices so thrilling? Be honest with yourself. At some point in our lives, we've all wanted to be superheroes. So states Dave Lazuski, alter ego, Kick-Ass. Personally, I can't argue that statement at all. We're here to talk about Kick-Ass. Based on the recently released Mark Millar and John Romita Jr. comic of the same name, the movie is violent, hilarious, badass, action-packed, and filled to the brim with enough nerd-tasticness that it is its very own thing, as well as an adaptation. No comic book geek or action fan should dare miss it. First of all, I want to apologize ahead of time for this interview. I am an avid comic book reader, and this book is in my collection as well. So from time to time, I will be bringing up the book, comparing aspects, but I promise to try my best not to spoil anything. So, we have Dave Lazuski, who, as he says, is not the class jock, the class clown, the class geek, or the class anything. In the movie, he even states that in his circle of friends, he's not even the funny one. As he says, like most people my age, I merely existed. But things changed drastically when Dave decides to try and emulate his hero figures by becoming a real-life superhero. Donning a scuba suit he bought off of eBay, a mask, and wielding a nightstick, he strikes out, and it all goes bad. He ends up in a fight that turns out very wrongly for him. He ends up getting stabbed and hit by a car, and ends up in the hospital for about 6 months. As time goes on, more and more real-life superheroes are brought into the mix, and Kick-Ass soon realizes this isn't as easy as it sounds. Plug-In, a Christian movie review magazine and website, described the film as Quentin Tarantino directing Superbad. They say it as a bad thing. I, however, look at it as a great thing. It's really gritty, but in the most comic sense of the word. People die, and there's blood, but there isn't any unneeded brutality or detail. If an action is taken, this is what it would look like. Any sense of violence is done tastefully, and it's not as violent as I know people would say it is, especially when it comes to, well, at least when it's not concerning Hit Girl, but I'll talk about that later. The movie is generally geared towards geek guys, but that's not a bad thing. Look at the success of all these other comic book films and tell me that it's a bad direction. Personally, I can relate to Dave's longing and fantasizing about becoming a superhero who does want to help people and fight for the greater good. There's a scene with Dave after he gets out of the hospital due to his first superhero fail, where he goes about trying out fight moves, cool lines, and basically trying to be cool in front of the mirror. I can only imagine how cool this guy thinks he is right now, and really, this had to take some guts. I want to take just a moment to talk about Nicolas Cage in this movie. I don't know what's up with people, but I love this guy. In the movie, he plays superhero Big Daddy, a Batman lookalike, and the father of Hit Girl. In the film, Nick Cage plays Big Daddy with an Adam West impression, doing all of his odd inflections and dialogue timing. While I thought this was hilarious, it took me a moment to get what he was doing, and I know there will likely be people who just flat out don't get it, but they aren't nerds and therefore are not cool. Like most adaptations, it's hard to discuss the film without talking about the source material. There aren't a lot of comic book movies out there right now that are based on one graphic novel or one contained story arc, at least ones that aren't directed by Zack Snyder. In the film, the movie is more serious than the book, in the sense that I felt that the book was more like a joke, from the point of how crazy would it be if this happened, and all the shenanigans that ensued. Juxtapose that to the film being, this is what it would be like in all seriousness. This is what it would kind of be like, without being tongue-in-cheek. I also felt the movie had a lot more humanity than the book, which is important to me in any film. While they severely dumbed down Kick-Ass's relationship with his dad, which begs the question, where in the world did he get that taser, some events are treated more heavy-handed, one of them being when Kick-Ass saves his first citizen. He boldly declares in so many or so few words that he would rather die than leave this victim's side, hinting at much more than simple comic book wish fulfillment and more of a eager desire to, serve his fellow man. The film also treats the death of one of its significants far more outright and less of an afterthought. These touches aren't going to garner any Oscars, but when Hollywoodizing a comic, some considerations must be made. While some aspects of the comic book stood up to being made to a film, I felt some did not. They did take out scenes like Kick-Ass's nightmarish torture scene. Trust me, what happens in the movie is nothing in contrast to what happens in the book. However, Hit Girl sometimes just doesn't feel right. While I get the ridiculous appeal of having an 11-year-old have a shootout with a dozen grown men and get away without a scratch, having a real flesh-and-blood little girl in the fray struck me as, well, hard to watch and just sort of wrong at times. It's not easy, nor is it really that fun, to watch a little girl get punched in the face by a grown man, even if it is just a movie. It is bearable, yes, to see her engaging in a fight, but not when it's this brutal. I also can't get behind the idea of her having to use the kind of language she did in the movie, which gets to the bottom of the worst, and I mean that absolutely. The actress who portrays that girl, little Chloe Moretz, says she isn't even allowed to refer to Kick-Ass by its real name and has to refer to the movie as Kick-Butt in her house. But she also says, having several older brothers, most of the stuff that's already in the script she is already very familiar with. I know it's more of a content gripe, but it's still there, and it still bugged me. Putting that aside, I really do recommend this film. Needless to say, ignorant and neglectful parents will rise up and scream from the rooftops that since it features brightly colored characters who call themselves superheroes, that magically means it's for kids. Well, it really doesn't. This is a fun, outlandish, comical, and serious look at the lunacy of these actions and the craziness of these people and their desire to emulate their heroes as well as, protecting people. The movie is just over the top enough. Let me just say, for those of you who haven't seen it, Jetpack plus Elvis's American Trilogy equals major win. And it has the right tone between serious and downright hilarious. It's a fan-pleasing adaptation while being its own thing at the same time. I personally feel like I liked it more than the book. I know some won't enjoy it, but that's okay. No one likes them anyway. So, in my closing remarks, the phrase on everyone's mind, the phrase that every other line has been building up to, their phrase finally arrives. Kick-Ass was Kick-Ass. Thank you. Good night.